Hello there. Welcome back to my podcast on Barzillai. Glad you could join me for this again. In this chapter, we're going to go a little deeper into some of the things that I've learned in studying this entire topic. I want to begin by talking about some of the kind of roller coaster experiences we can have as leaders, spiritual leaders. You can come off a mountaintop, you preached a great sermon, you had a great week, you saw, whatever, event you were trying to put on, you thought it become a great success, and yet after that you kind of find yourself in a valley. And that is sometimes the kind of things that pastors and spiritual leaders go through. It's kind of the warp and woof of the spiritual life. And of course, if we look in the Bible, we don't have to look too far to find in First Kings the story of what happened to Elijah and what happened with him. Uh, Sometimes it's not necessarily a scandal or some great, thing that happened, but it can just be, Lord, a victory where you're wondering what in the world happened. Why did I go from this place to this place so quickly? And when that happens, you can feel discouraged, you can feel depressed, you can feel like, wow. I really need the Lord. I need help. And of course, that's where we find Elijah. He's under the broom tree. He's gone from the best day of his life, fire on the altar, slaughtering all the evil evil priests, going up on the mountain, literally calling for rain. It came, outrunning Ahab's chariot. I mean, all of these great things happened, and of course, we know what happened next. His uh, Ahab's wife, Jezebel, threatens Elijah, and he runs for his life. We read this. He says he came to a broom bush and he sat down under it and prayed that he might die. I've had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors. First Kings 19:4. And I can understand that. I think every spiritual leader, every pastor might come to a place where they just thought, wow, what's going on? And what do I do now? I think about some of the highlights in my life. Back in 1979, we launched a Jesus festival. It was amazing. Thousands of people came from all over, some even outside of California came. Truckloads, busloads of people came. It was an awesome time. We saw actually some signs and wonders in the sky. We saw thousands of people respond to the altar call. Many people came to Christ. Many people got called into the ministry. It was an amazing time. But I got came off of that wonderful high and discovered that we were seriously in debt, and it was depressing. I mean, there were nights we got through it, but there were some days and nights that were just really difficult. And you say, how can you go from that mountaintop to something like that? Uh, so, I've had times at my church too. We started a church in the home back in 1988. It prospered. We got a new property. We grew to almost 600. But I'll tell you, there were times dealing with people, dealing with issues. I can remember driving out of the parking lot of our church campus and just going, God, maybe can I just get a job bucking hay in Montana somewhere? It was just kind of difficult and discouraging. But we got through both those kinds of times in my life, and I want to go back to Elijah, though. What did he need at this time? He didn't need a good book to read, a conference. He didn't need a strategy session, uh, and yet not even correction. Let's see what happened. Well, we read this. All at once, an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." So Elijah's come from this mountaintop experience and then fled from the threats of Jezebel, and then finds himself under a broom tree somewhere wanting to die. But this is what it says later on. All at once, an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat. Get up and eat, for the trip is too much for you." Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. So think about it. The angel comes, and he doesn't really say a lot to him. He just gives him some bread, angel food. We talk about that. He gives him some water. He gets refreshed, sleeps again, rests, wakes up, eats one more, and so when the angel arrives, he arrives with bread and water. And there's something about a meal. I know they say it sets off the endorphins in you, and that's one of the things that a Barzillai does. Uh, he comes and he brings more than just maybe some good comforting words or instructions, but also often over a meal or just a cup of coffee or just somebody to be there to really be with you. And this whole ministry of Standing Stone began because a couple had a real burden for uh, families, pastors, and leadership, couples that needed counseling, needed encouragement. And so they had a very nice home, resort thing, and they would invite couples there for, a week and just take care of all their needs and let them receive counseling and encouragement. And of course, that went from this wonderful ministry now where uh, hundreds of us as pastors, shepherds, reach out and help and assist shepherds, and often we'll buy them a meal, we'll take them to lunch, we'll buy them coffee, and we'll be there, and we'll be willing to share with them our victories, our failures, be there to pray for them and encourage them, and to give them that cake and that water. And of course, what happens on the other side. He went on to great victory. He went on to Elijah to meet with the Lord and to continue to carry on his ministry and be productive. And I think of other examples like that. We think of Moses when he is literally the intercessor for the battle that Joshua was in. And we see Aaron and Hur there standing on either side of him. But Moses was growing weary. He needed someone to help him, continue in his ministry. And so we read this in Exodus. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side and another on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. And I think this is what's so important about this sort of ministry is that you're there not just for one meal, one cup of coffee, but you're there called to be with that pastor, that spiritual leader for many, many months, many years. Some pastors I've stood with and been there for them year after year, walked through some difficult times, but until you're there to hold up their hand till sunsets. And it's so easy to overlook some of the things, pastors don't go and preach and are not successful in typical ways. They need someone there to stand with them, to intercede with them. I think of Charles Finney and Father Nash. Finney had a great ministry, a powerful ministry, but he had someone literally under the stage praying for him, interceding for him, and broke up the ground spiritually before Finney even began to preach. And after Nash died, Finney never had the same impact that he did before. I think of Billy Graham. I remember when he came here to San Diego, and we had one of his final crusades. At least that they were telling us. And I remember before he even started, they brought in a team that challenged us to be praying, and there was that prayer going on in small groups for a year before he ever arrived to preach. And then I think of our Lord and Savior in the Garden of Gethsemane, and I think of the fact that he took three of the disciples, the apostles that were closest to him. And those three, he wanted to be there with him when he was going through this immense trial. And the sad thing is that they fell asleep. He said this, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." And that's one of the things we do as shepherds That's what a Barzillai does. He's there. He's bringing the things that the shepherd of Israel needs. He's there for him. And so the same way, we're there. And we're there to do it. Gethsemane, just, you see Jesus in Gethsemane, and he comes back to his apostles, and they fall asleep. And you realize that there's something about knowing that you've asked somebody to be there for you and then discover that they actually are consistently there. They haven't fallen asleep. They're sticking with you. They're with you. And so we've seen this broom tree experience. We've seen the hill above the battle, and we've seen the garden in the dark. Elijah was burned out, ready to die. Moses' arms were too heavy, and Jesus is crushed to the point of death. But we find that a meal, tap on the shoulder, a glass of water is what Elijah needed. We see two men standing beside Moses that are there for him right to the end. And we think of Jesus, who needed a friend that was awake in the dark. And I think about the work of Barzillai. He had a wealth of life experience. He was there to provide David with the very things that he needed during that time. And you may be a shepherd, that you're in your own garden. You may be an Elijah who needs somebody to come and just be there and give you a cake and a cup of coffee or whatever it takes. You may need a Aaron or her to stand alongside of you. This is what a Barzillai does. And I am blessed that I get called into this ministry. We're in the midst of raising our funds for this, but we're looking forward in the next couple of months to be launching into this full time. I already mentor spiritual leaders. I'm already there for them, encouraging them, but we'll be able to do this in a more effective and more full time way.